Oh, that's my fair.
Sunday morning in daylight saving time. On the Joe and Joe Weather Show, we have winter storm watches up for a good portion of the Northeast, and who knows, we may have more winter storm watches added to this before the day is done. Another winter storm and flash flood watches up in the western part of the United States. Advisories and warnings up for the northern plains on a busy Sunday. Surprise on some of the weather models as we analyze what's going to be happening going forward. And we have a very, very special guest coming up. All of that on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. They're making the transition over to winter to spring, but they may have to hold it off for a day or two. We have sand, topsoil, mulch, and of course, they still got lots of salt. And maybe it'll get used. 631-756-1125 for the best prices in town. As only Joe Rayo can tell you with an eminent style. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Joe. Ooh, that voice.
Yes. And we have today, although he's a little hard to see, you got a light in there, Joe? It's Dave.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We have, that he did go to, that he played hooky today from his class at charm school, although he has graduated at the top of his class. The wonderful and always interesting, occasionally controversial Dave Tolleris is joining us this morning today on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. And I have to say, Dave, that this is one of those instances where you start looking at weather models early and you look for ways for things to evolve differently. And
yes.
And this seems to be one of those situations where we're seeing this evolve in a slightly different fashion than what was being advertised by some, but not necessarily all models if you looked carefully enough over the last couple of days.
Yeah, and part of it is, it's been such a crappy winter that people have a tendency of saying, well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because people are humans, and like bad generals, sometimes we fight the last war.
Most are human, but go on.
Well, okay, I'm not sure all of us are, but okay, well, that was fun. But the thing is, you fight the last, like bad generals, you fight a long time. So you fight the last war. It's been such a crappy winter. What are the chances of finally getting a nor'easter, in the middle of March, a week before, 8 days before the beginning of spring? So there's obviously going to be some skepticism about this, whether it's actually going to happen. I try and avoid doing that. I try not to think of, it's been this sort of stuff, it can't happen. And because, when you get into big events, big the hurricanes or nor'easters or what have you, they always occur at the end of the bell curve, at the very end of the probability. Right. I mean, what are the odds of like Sandy going up into New Jersey, going up the parallel on the coast and turning into New Jersey and New York? Well, it never happened before. What are the odds of like 5 hurricanes showing up in the Gulf of Mexico in the 2005? It's never happened before. What is the odds of Washington, D.C. in the 2009-2010 winter having 2 blizzards 4 days apart? Never happened before. So if you always go with what's not likely to happen, then when the big event comes along, you miss it because, well, it's probably not going to happen. But it does happen. That's the whole point, is that sometimes it does happen. And this is going to be a big storm. For a lot of people in the Northeast, obviously, you could say it's going to be the biggest one of the winter, but that's not saying much.
Right. Well, and everybody's not everybody, I shouldn't say, but I guess the thing that gets me most annoyed is when people are so focused on their own zip code. Well, I didn't get any snow, so therefore nobody got any snow. Your old buddy Joe Rayo is chomping at the bit since you haven't spoken to each other in quite a while. I got to do something really quick, so you two talk. I'll be back in a second.
All right. Hey, Joe.
Well, for a lot of people who are not aware, Dave Tolleris has been in the weather business. Somebody wrote on the chat board here, is he a weatherman? And I will tell you all that, yes, Dave Tolleris most definitely is a weatherman. He has a very popular website. At least I assume it's still up, Dave, right?
Yep. WxRisk is still there.
Yep. Okay. So, and I actually used to work with Dave, many, many years ago. In fact, in thinking about it, I think the number of years goes all the way back to 30 years since we were last together.
Yeah, it's about 30 years.
Dave, by the way,
it's about 30 years.
By the way, and then let's get going, I guess, with the weather stuff. Tell everybody, where your website, where you are on Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the Facebook is pretty easy. It's WxRisk. You just WxRisk, RISK, like the game, and you can see it on Facebook. And the Twitter page is WxRisk Grains. That's one word, WxRisk Grains. And because a lot of what I do on Twitter after you get past the winter season is with the grains and commodities. I do a lot of grain and commodity forecasting, just in the U.S., but I do it in Argentina and Brazil and China and Europe and Ukraine and Australia and India, the whole thing. So it's always 24/7 with me outside of the winter season. So, and then of course is the hurricane season. But so that's what the Twitter page is. So yeah, and I've been up for a while. The Facebook page, 300,000 followers, which I more popular than Lindsay Lohan. So I guess that's good. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I suppose that's good. I mean, I'm not a drunken skank, so that helps. So that's good. And the Twitter page has a nice following as well. And mostly on the Facebook page, usually I do the lower Mid Atlantic. The areas between Washington D.C. down to North Carolina, and then out to West Virginia and Kentucky. But I cover all the Eastern United States as much as I can. But a lot of my following is in the Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, West Virginia, North Carolina area. But I do have a lot of following up in the Northeast as well.
Okay.
And when I see big Northeast snowstorms, just because I'm not getting any here in Central Virginia doesn't mean I don't have an interest in what's going on in my old hometowns of Philly, New York, New Jersey, Boston, Connecticut, where I've been. I grew up and was raised in. So
the snow in the background of your shot then is a faux shot.
Yeah, that's not my window. Yeah.
Okay, just check. Just want to make sure.
No.
Okay.
Not.
Welcome to everybody on the chat board on this Sunday morning when the abomination of daylight saving time begins. We welcome your comments and your questions. So put them up on the chat board. Joe Rayo will monitor the chat board for those, and we will share them with Dave. And Dave, I'm sure, will address whatever it is you bring up.
Sure.
We are at 43 likes already, so let's see if we can take it over 100. And on that note, why don't we get going here? I'll quickly go through what's going on right now so that everybody is up to date on all the watches and all the rest of it.
Can I just bring something
Joe.
up? Keith James II is saying, Joe Cioffi, no teachers in my building are prepping for this one. Yesterday's bust was predicted to be 4 to 6 inches in northern New Jersey. We got 0.4 to 0.6 inches. Nobody believes what's coming our way is going to happen. I want to point out to Keith James that in those areas of northern New Jersey, yeah, they did get 4 to 6 inches. It was, however, mostly on colder surfaces, on the grass, car tops, trees. A lot of the problem with the forecast was that on many of the roadways, many of the paved surfaces, there was maybe about a half an inch of snow as compared to the colder spots, which had 10 times more snow. And what I'm saying for this upcoming system, and I will be interesting to know whether or not you guys agree, is that we're going to see basically the same thing, that places where 5, 6, 8, 10 inches are being predicted, it very well is going to come to pass, but it's going to come to pass more on colder surfaces like the grass. And for paved surfaces, and especially treated surfaces, not much is going to happen. And the fact is that for the first half of the storm, just about everybody is going to see rain. And once it changes over to snow, the snow is going to have a tough time on paved surfaces into sticking or accumulating to any degree initially because the ground is so wet. So yes, it is going to be a big storm. Yes, there are going to be big accumulations, but what everybody perceives as a big snow, oh, I'm looking out the window right now. Oh, I can't go to work today. Look at that. The road is so snow covered. It's not going to be that way. I think what's going to happen is that it's going to be snowing on the grass. It's going to snow on your roof, or it's going to on your wooden deck. But for many of the roadways, especially the main drags, I think there's going to be a lot more wetness than whiteness with this particular storm. And yes, if you really had to, I think you can go to work on Tuesday, even though, again, early Tuesday especially, it looks like it's going to be snowing to beat the band. Anyway, that's my opinion on this.
Well, I would just here's what I would add to this. We are still, and it's really important everybody understands this. We're still in forecasting mode, and that is we're still waiting to see how all these puzzle pieces come together. That's first off. Second, it's really important, and most people don't do this. It's really important if you're going to listen to a weather forecast, listen to the whole thing, okay? Don't cherry pick, words here and in there, because these things are not simple. They're very complicated. I agree with you, Joe. I mean, to a large extent, I just want to throw in a couple of asterisks. Elevation's going to make a difference. Mountains versus valleys, you go up 500 feet, you go higher than that, particularly in inland areas. It could be different than what you see down closer to sea level. Also, and this is something that I think we have to wait to see how it plays out, but it's been, my experience with March storms is intensity drives accumulation. If we get into a situation where we're dealing with moderate to heavy snow falling, yeah, you'll probably lose some accumulation at the onset, but eventually it takes complete control of what's going on. So that is a dynamic that we're going to have to figure out. Maybe at this time tomorrow we'll have a much better handle on that part of the equation. So I would just point out that anytime you have a situation like this, you're in marginal temperatures. You have to pay attention to intensity as far as whether roads get covered in the daytime or not. This is all part of the plot. But yeah, you go further inland, you go up further north. It does look like for those areas it's going to be a bigger problem. Dave, you got anything to add to that real quick?
Number one rule of March snowstorms, from my point of view, from my experience, is that you get your best accumulations at night. I think, Joe, you would agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in the daytime becomes a problem. Now, when you get the blizzard of 1993, the March superstorm, yeah, it'll snow like hell during the daytime, but most March snowstorms aren't like that. So there is that. Also, the roads are warm because of all the warm conditions we've had. The roads are warm, and it's going to be exactly what Joe said. Joe Rayo said that the roads are going to be a problem, and there's going to be significant differences between the grassy surfaces at car tops, your branches, your grass, those sorts of things, and what the roads are going to have. So there is that. Now, if we're snowing like hell, you're snowing like hell in northern New Jersey, New York City Tuesday morning. It's coming down to beat the band. That's going to cause commuting problems just off the top. But in terms of whether the roads will be impassable, that's not going to happen. And also, when we look at the model data, you will see that there are significant differences in the snow accumulations at the elevations. Like you'll see, very clearly in Connecticut, New England, whether you're looking at the NAM or the WRF or the Canadian or the European, the GFS, that they have a really distinct band of much less snow in the Connecticut River Valley, where you get much more snow in Torrington than you do in New Haven or even in Hartford. And you see that in the Hudson River Valley as well, where you get much more snow in the mountains, either side of the valley, but in the valley itself, the snow accumulations are significantly different. What that's telling us is that this is an elevation-driven event, heavily elevation-driven.
And the thing I was telling Joe last night, Dave, is in looking at the special weather statements issued by both Albany and the NWS New York or Upton, neither one puts any specific or is pointing specifically at elevation. They're just saying flat. For example, up here in Putnam County, 5 to 10 inches, winter storm watch. Nothing for northern Westchester, nothing for Rockland County, which amazes me how it just dropped. You go from some snow to a major storm. But I think what should be stressed in those statements is that the higher up you go, the more likely you're going to hit the higher end of the range. There are places in Putnam County that are above 1,000 feet. In Orange County, I've always said from the get-go, and I don't understand why, the NWS hasn't broken Orange County down into two separate entities.
Sure.
The northern areas, north or along and north of I-84, where in some cases the elevation can be upwards to 1,500 or 1,700 feet. You're going to get a ton more snow up there as opposed to down in the lower end of Orange County, or the part of Orange County that's immediately adjacent to the Hudson River. But usually when they have storm watches or warnings or advisories, they lump the whole county into one, and they really should make differentials between high and low. And in this case, this is a classic scenario of elevation snow, that we're going to see a heck of a lot more snow at elevations above 900 feet. In fact, if you're above 1,000 feet, I don't think it's going to matter whether or not, for you above 1,000 feet, it's going to stick to the roads. It's going to stick more readily at higher elevations as opposed to places that are much lower down, where they're going to have to wait a while for the roads to get cold enough, and with the rain on the roadways to preclude the initial shot of snow accumulating. So there are differences, but there was no mention in either statement from Albany or New York. And I'm not, I don't mean to say that these guys aren't doing their job, but I mean, I really think that they should have mentioned, or at least stressed, elevation in this case, because elevation is going to play a big role in what we're going to see tomorrow night and on into Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely. We have that problem down here in Virginia, but some of the NWS offices here, they've broken up some of the counties in and around the fall line, 95 between west and east. They probably should do that in the Hudson Valley as well. They really, you have to account for elevation, and they don't, and it becomes a problem. So you end up getting a huge variation of the snowfall, and that is going to happen with this event. There's no doubt about that. It's going to be elevation. You can clearly see that on all the short range and the global models as well. Global models are clearly showing elevation here as an issue.
Just want to acknowledge Barry Goldberg hitting Super Chat. Thank you, Barry. Most appreciated. And we also had one from earlier. We had 27 Nor'easter. Thank you for hitting Super Chat today. Most appreciated. I know you pointed to a storm a possible analog to one in the early 50s. I just don't have the opportunity to pull down maps. It would take me some time to do a little research to bring it up on the screen, but maybe we'll do that tomorrow.
Which storm was he referring to?
I think he said a February storm in 1952, but let me just find the if you would, can you put it back up on the chat, because I can't scroll through all of this. And we'll see what we can do with it. All right, let's run through what's going on right now, and then we'll get into the maps and the guidance. And of course, if it wasn't daylight saving time, we'd have the GFS out far enough. But unfortunately, that is not the case. But thankfully, we don't have to look at 180 hours. We just have to look at within 72 hours, so that should come out quick within the next half hour. Okay, we have so far winter storm watches up for I think one county in northwest New Jersey, a couple of counties in northeastern Pennsylvania, and then moving along through upstate New York, especially north of Route 84, northern and western Connecticut, almost all of Massachusetts except the coast and southeast. Central and southern Vermont and New Hampshire, and also into the first watches up for Maine's always a tough, southwestern Maine, I guess we'll call it that. We've also got what's going on the West Coast, and we don't want to leave those folks out because they're their hell continues. Winter storm warnings in the Sierra Nevadas. They've got flash flood watches up for a good chunk of the rest of the state because of the heavy rains that have been coming in. Also, some flash flood watches up for northeastern Nevada. And we also have some winter weather advisories in the, am I right, Dave, the Shenandoah Valley?
Yeah, we got them in the Shenandoah Valley, yep, all the way up into western Maryland, the eastern West Virginia, places in south central Pennsylvania. It's snowing, in Staunton and Harrisonburg and Stanton, as they say here.
Yeah.
Harrisonburg, Lynchburg's got it. Roanoke had some snow earlier. I mean, not a big deal, but an inch or two in some grassy surface.
Okay, gotcha. And just real quick, Robert Russo, Joe Lopresti, also hitting the tip jar today. Thank you very much indeed. And now Jason Kaplan also hitting the tip jar. Thanks so much, folks. So let's look at the...
And Joe, if you give me a chance, I mean, not immediately, but I mean, just give me sharing capabilities, and I'll try to share. Maybe you want to share too your snow map, unless you're not planning to publicly show the snow map until.
If you'll do it, if you do it, I'll do it. Yeah, sharing's turned on for both of you, so. Go ahead, Joe, put it up. I'm just going to run through these maps real quick, and then I'll switch over to you. So here's the satellite loop this morning. The obvious standout is on the far right, because you can see the system from yesterday is now well out into the Atlantic to the east, but it's also well developed and quite deep as it moves straight eastward. Big swirl out there, and now, of course, you've got the second energy quickly running in behind it. There's showers and some thunderstorms moving through parts of the southern Georgia, southern Alabama, southern Mississippi. You can see the lightning flashes there on the satellite loop. And out in the west, the next round of moisture getting ready to move in with a low that's just offshore, and more moisture and more solid rainfalls there. Take a look at the radar as of just coming up on 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, and you see the heavy precip that's from eastern North Carolina into South Carolina, central Georgia, across Alabama into Mississippi. That is the lead system that's kind of running out ahead of all of this, and then of course you've got precip on the radar that extends northwestward through Pennsylvania and back over the Great Lakes and into the upper Midwest, with the most important upper air energy that is coming southward. And then out in the west, a quick close-up of the radar, some heavy rains going through San Francisco right now. The last thing these folks needed was to get, after some areas with snow piles up to 20 and 30 feet of snow in the mountains, now having to deal with what could be 10 inches or more of rain. That is a recipe for disaster, but we'll see how it plays out. 7-day rainfall. WPC, I'm going to do the 3-day precip amount so you can see what's showing up in the Northeast. The liquid precip amounts anywhere from northern New Jersey east to southeastern New England. You have a fairly large area of 1.5 to 2.5 inches of liquid precip, which is substantial. Also seeing 3/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches across the Gulf states, much of that front end loaded. And you've got a ton of precip in the west, particularly in the Sierra Nevadas, and a lot of that is going to be rain rather than snow. So again, that is not good news for those folks there. And just real quick, and it's early in the game here, so I'm expecting that WPC will be doing some updates based on new model guidance. This is always one of those lagging maps in terms of being trying to get a feel for what's going on, because oftentimes their forecasts are put out before the new model cycle is out, and we're at an advantage here because we can actually look at the new model cycle while it's happening. But as of a couple of hours ago, WPC has moved the 50% line for at least the probability of 2 inches of snow, which is a line I like to use as a tool, almost down to New York City, but not quite. Getting close, though. And you can see where all the 80 to 100% is, all in the reds, from northern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, on up into interior New England. The 50% line has now moved to Boston. So I think when they update this, we're going to we're going to see some changes and maybe some shifts southward, in my opinion. Okay, so guys, Dave and Joe, since both of you, Dave, you and I briefly talked about this before the show, and Joe, we were messaging each other last night talking about, the complex nature of all of this. It seems to me, and this is something that I noticed yesterday, started picking up on it early in the day, that maybe this is evolving into something a bit different than what some of the models were picturing, which was the idea that there was going to be a low that's going to form off the North Carolina coast. It's going to run up northeast. The energy from the north swings in, strengthens that to a major storm that winds up going somewhere from Cape Cod to the Gulf of Maine, and then doing a little bit of a loop and then dropping southward. But now it seems that initial run of energy coming off the coast is probably may not wind up being the actual surface low, and that the actual surface low may come from the diving northern energy that is coming down from the Great Lakes, and most importantly for areas on the southern flank of that winter storm watch area, Long Island, maybe southern Connecticut, down into maybe central New Jersey, and perhaps a little bit further south into eastern Pennsylvania. It now seems, and Dave, you certainly will express an opinion on this. The Europeans showed this yesterday, started showing this yesterday and overnight, and now the NAM has come in, and to me the track of the upper low here to me seems to be the most important. It's deeper, and it's tracking a little bit further south. It looks like it wants to take a center out down near Delaware Bay now, and then moving it off the New Jersey coast. So, I mean, are we on the same page with this? Do you have differing thoughts on how this kind of changes certain things about this developing storm?
Well, my view was the GFS has a problem. It always has had a problem with southern stream energy. So, and if you compare the model output, you'll see that the GFS has a lot less snow in New York and Long Island and southern Connecticut than the European or the NAM or the Canadian or the short range RGEM. And the reason for that is because it is mishandling the southern energy here again. So now that the NAM is coming and it buries, I mean, it really has very impressive snow really hard in the pre-dawn hours of Tuesday in northern New Jersey and the Hudson Low, just north of New York. And then Tuesday morning in New York, I mean, if you go to these different websites, the tropical weather tidbits or what have you,
which we have I have the NAM I have the NAM surface, the new NAM surface on the screen.
And here's to the one that says, let me take a look, see which view is this. The one that has, let's see here. Is that the one I want? Yeah, that might be it. That's the one I want. Oh, MSL said rain and frozen. If you can switch to that view,
all right. So
you'll see that.
Okay, I'm sorry. You want? Do you have it up on your screen? You can. I'll switch. I'll switch back to us, and you could share it.
The one you have there is good, and that okay. You can see the really heavy snow there coming down. So, and then what's happened here is that the NAM now, if you look at you can see the vorticity that there is a distinct negative tilt on early Tuesday morning, as the upper low dives into Pennsylvania, and when you get a negative tilt like this, the low is going to go boom.
Yeah, I have the 500. I have the 500 on there. So yeah, here's your negative tilt for the folks who want to see what Dave's talking about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There it is, right there at that time frame. You can see that there it is. That's the one at what was that? At 48 hours. That's it. That's correct. And the negative tilt, so the low develops there, exactly with the red line that you drew in there. That's perfect. And it captures the coastal low. The Europeans been showing this. So the issue is, if you look at I saw the 6E GFS, it actually has a piece of the surface low going into New York City. And it's got the rain snow line well to the north. Well, the other models don't have that. I'm not sure what the GFS is looking at here. But the NAM is showing this. The European at 6Z is showing it. The 6Z European Ensemble, the Canadian is showing it. So I don't know what the GFS is doing here. And unfortunately, they have time to change this, but they have a lot of rain in New York City, Long Island, and Connecticut, and very little snow mentioned in the forecast. And based upon what I'm seeing in the NAM, they're going to have to change that at this afternoon when they do the afternoon update. I don't know. You guys think about that, but the NAM is not. So that NAM model at 12Z is not supporting what the NWS has in New York, and Connecticut, or Long Island, or Northeast New Jersey.
No, well, I just want to point out here, the two things that I noticed in looking at the NAM FOOS. This is the tabular numbers of the northeastern stations that are represented on the NAM. Two things. Number one, I honestly believe, and Joe, I don't know how much you're going to agree with me, but there must be some kind of convective feedback, because if you follow the NAM, if you take the NAM at face value,
right, and
this FOOS is suggesting that New York City is going to get 20 inches of snow. Right. I mean, there's a 6-hour period where they have 1.33 inches. That's between 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning and 1 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon. And then after that, they keep going, not as strongly, but they continue with another almost half inch through the rest of the day. I don't know if I would buy into that, because I've been figuring all along that the precipitation is going to ramp up after dark tomorrow night and reach its peak sometime in the pre-dawn hours or right around daybreak on Tuesday morning, and then we'll slowly begin to wind on down, and it'll continue maybe into the afternoon, but there won't be anywhere near as much midday and afternoon as what we may see in the early morning hours. The other thing that I took note of is the fact that if you look at the temperatures, the T1s, the lowest level of the atmosphere, that's the lowest 35 millibars from ground level to about 1,000 feet. New York City, it drops to 0. You say, oh, good, 0. That's what we need to make snow. But I also notice it's 0 in Boston. It's 0 at Albany. It's 0 at Philadelphia. Everybody is 0.
Well,
normally, you would expect that.
It's marginal cold air. I mean, there's no real Arctic influence here. I get and I understand that. And you and I, by the way, and the three of us have all seen instances where we've been in situations like this, and you get dynamic cooling, which clearly, when you look at the upper air, this is certainly a case. If we're getting under that vigorous upper low, that'd be dynamic cooling. If it's snowing hard enough, yeah, you're not going to go to you're not going to go to 25, but you certainly could go to 31 or 30, and maybe even 29. I would argue. I would say.
And the other thing, Joe, I don't mean to cut in here, but one other important facet of this is on Tropical Tidbits is the column thermodynamics. And I'm looking at thermodynamic. I'm also doing some soundings, and I'm seeing at the peak of this storm in many localities temperatures of 34, 35, 37. I'm saying, we're going to need the dynamics to cool everything down. And yet, how come if the dynamics are clearly being shown with the F-Gen bands moving across before dawn on Tuesday morning, and all of the precip and the colors. Everybody's looking at the colors. Oh, it went from green to blue. Well, those are the algorithms built into the equations of the model. But I'm saying, well, if that all be the case, then why isn't the thermodynamic levels showing a sudden drop of or a bend to 32 or even just below? I mean, in some cases on the European, my God, all of this is happening, and the freezing line, the 32-degree line, is like way up near Timothy Veltman's house in Albany.
No, look, I don't disagree with anything you say, and this is always that big variable in this time of year in an atmosphere like this, where you don't have real Arctic air. You really don't even have decent Canadian air. You've just got sort of dirty cold air. And yeah, it's all going to have to be done with the dynamics. But you know what? We've also seen instances like this where you wind up surprising. Who's to say that the amount of precip on that's being generated on the NAM is is not real, but maybe what's real is the fact that instead of doing a 10-to-1 ratio, maybe we should be doing 6-to-1, 5-to-1,
Oh yeah.
and cut those numbers and cut those huge amounts that the model generates on a 10-to-1 ratio with 2 inches of liquid. Just cut them in half. I mean, that still would suggest. I think my argument is here. I mean, my point in all this here is not so much what's going to go on inland, because I think if you're north of, if you're at Route 84, if you're north of Route 84, right at this point, you might as well just put your feet up and just wait for the snows to come. It's that southern flank over the metro area, over the populated metro areas in Long Island and northern New Jersey, and maybe even a little bit further south into central Jersey. That's the toughest part of this forecast, and that's why we got to take all these pieces and trying to figure out what numbers are real and what numbers are not real. I mean, I certainly would not go 10-to-1 in a forecast for areas down close to the coast. I mean, unless Dave, you're on the same page.
Yeah, look, thinking at Joe's point when he was making it, Joe Reel's point there, I strongly agree with it. If you look at the actual soundings, if you go to the tropical tidbits and you click on the New York City, location, you get the red dot that shows up there in the map, right? And look at the sounding. For example,
which I'll bring up right now. Let's see if I can bring up if there's a. Oh, I have to go to. I have to go to the NAM 3 here. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you go to the NAM and you do the sounding and you get to where it says 43 hour forecast hour 43, which is 7Z on Tuesday morning. Now that's just when it's beginning to change, and you'll see your temperature is 35 degrees. But when you advance it and you go to, let's say, Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., okay, you're in the dark blue, but you're 34, 35 degrees at the surface, Joe.
Yeah, I have this sounding here. Now, again, that assumes, by the way, that the model's correct on that. We don't know that. I mean, more often than not, it's not correct. I've certainly seen it where it goes, it's showing 34, 33 in instances where you're looking at dynamic cooling and the actual temperature, real temperature, winds up being 5 degrees lower than that. So, you have to kind of be a little careful here, given that, if these dynamics are real, that you're going to get the cooling. By the way, very quickly, Cecilia Fernandez, 2 things. What I mean by dirty cold air is we don't have a fresh cold air mass coming down from Canada. We really haven't had a fresh cold air mass coming down from Canada. We're just kind of sitting in the same air we've been sitting for many days now. So when you look at the temperatures across the Northeast, there's down to the northern Mid-Atlantic states, there's a uniformity to those temperatures. You're not seeing temperatures that are 20 and 30 degrees colder to our north, which in an instance like this would make for an entirely different scenario snow-wise. We wouldn't be having conversations and trying to figure out precip types and all the rest of it. So that's that. And on the negative tilt question that I showed you before, basically when you look at the upper air and the contours, okay, the contours are oriented from the low in a northwest southeast position. And when you get a negative tilt like that, that's a very dynamic structure that causes storms to intensify. So without getting too complicated. So I just wanted to cover on those. This is not going to be easy to try to put a number on how much is going to fall. I think that really was what it boils down to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, like Joe Rail said, and the data shows the temperature boundary at the surface is 34, 35 degrees, which would imply, a mix at best and hard to get accumulation. But if you look at the photogenetic forcing, the dynamics in the atmosphere, which you showed earlier, Joe, on the NAM, it really is monstrously strong in New York City on Tuesday morning, and Long Island and Southwest Connecticut and Northeast New Jersey. I mean, and so could that force the temperature down to 32.5 or something in the heavy snow for 3 or 4 hours, and that's when you get your accumulation? Yeah, that's possible, sure.
And by the way, the 850, I got that map up there. The blue lines represent the temperatures at 850 millibars. It's minus, it's -6 with all that FGen. That certainly can mix down.
That's one of the reasons why I was, if you look at my, I don't know if you saw my first call map, which I put out, it's on the Twitter page and on the Facebook page, I put out last night. I was so bullish with the snow amounts because, if you look at the ensembles, look at the European ensemble, New York City's 850 temperature is on -3 or -4 last night on the 6-0 on this morning in New York City. I mean, the zero line is way east of Long Island. So
right.
the mid-levels of the atmosphere are really cold, and it will come down that, all the way down as snow. And, my thinking now is, I'm seeing this frontogenetic force thing, and I'm thinking, okay, it's probably going to drop the temperature at the height of the storm Tuesday morning for several hours in New York City to 32 degrees. And I think that's when you're going to get your accumulation. But,
I hear you, Dave. Get your snow map up on your screen. Joe, I have Joe's snow map from yesterday. So Joe, you go first, and then Dave can go second, and then I'll go third with mine. And go ahead. So Joe, you go.
All right. Well, this map is a little different. In fact, it's a lot different from the map I usually put up. I usually put it up centered closely on the lower Hudson Valley, but this one shows much of the northeastern United States, and even down into West Virginia. In fact, Dave mentioned that area of snow down across the Appalachian Trail in West Virginia, and I've even got that on this map. But the one thing that differs from all the other maps I put out is this hatched zone that you see right here, this line. And what that is, as you see in the legend here, is locations south of this line. We'll see snow accumulations primarily on non-paved surfaces. So here you see, for example, the zone of 12 inches of snow. That's below that hatched line. So I'm saying there's going to be 12 inches or maybe a foot of snow, but yet it will be mostly on non-paved surfaces, and maybe on roadways, you get a fraction of that, maybe only an inch or two, because, again, assuming that the roadways are going to be wet or warm, there's not going to be anywhere near the amount that the colder surfaces are going to pick up. However, north of that line, snow, I say, will readily accumulate on most surfaces. So if you're up in this area north of this line, and especially, I said ground zero for this storm in terms of snowfall, probably be the Taconic and Green Mountains of Vermont, where they could pick up easily 12, maybe even as much as 16 or 18 inches of snow. And it doesn't matter. It's going to accumulate on colder surfaces. It's going to accumulate on the roadways. This is going to be where the big time snows are going to be. But south of this line, again, the amount of snow that you're going to see is going to be on colder surfaces. Now, I put one other disclaimer here, and that is locations above 900-foot elevations will also see snow accumulations on most surfaces. The problem with all snow maps is that they're one-dimensional. They don't show you, for example, the 1,600-foot elevation in northern Orange County or the 1,800-foot elevation in the northwest corner in Sussex County, New Jersey at High Point State Park. They don't show that. So if you're in those areas above, let's say 1,000 feet, it's going to stick whether you're on the road or whether you have a colder surface. It doesn't show. What I'm trying to show here is that for folks like New York City or in parts of the Hudson Valley that are below that 1,000 or 900-foot level, you're going to see a lot of the snow accumulate not on the roadways necessarily, but on those colder surfaces. My wooden deck, for example, is always the first thing that the snow accumulates to. My daughter says she's coming, and I know she's watching right now. She says she's coming here tomorrow night to help her two aged elderly parents with the shoveling. And I said, well, a lot of this is not going to be on the driveway. She said, so why am I coming home for? I said, you're coming home because you're going to help us out on the deck, because the driveway may only have an inch or two, but the deck is probably going to get the full whatever we get, 4, 5, 6 inches. And Dave was absolutely right, or Joe was absolutely right. This is going to be not a 10-to-1 snow. This ratio is going to be like 6-to-1, 8-to-1. We're talking about a very heavy, wet snow, kind of like the equivalent of maybe almost wet concrete, very hard to push along with your shovel, and even hard for the snow blowers to digest and spit out. So it's gonna be tough. And so that's where I had, as of late yesterday, gentlemen. This is, again, the snow amounts, but this line right here differentiates between places that have colder surfaces where the snow is going to be most readily sticking, as opposed to places north of this hatch line where it's going to be snowing everywhere, regardless on cold surfaces and regular road surfaces, because it's going to be cold enough up here or to support snow accumulations everywhere. And like I said, down here, let's say in the lower Hudson Valley, people looking out their window on Tuesday morning, they'll see the snow. And it could be coming down at a great clip because of the FGen that's over us. But they look out and they say, well, it's certainly a lot on my grass or on my lawn, but it doesn't look all that much on my driveway. Maybe I can actually drive on the driveway or the main thoroughfare in front of my house, the streets. That's going to be the big difference down here in terms of snow amounts.
All right, just real big,
Dave,
before you go, just let me just really quick, because Leon Probitsky hit Super Chat, and so did Brandon Doherty. Thank you both for hitting the tip jar. Adam Lowe, I would just say two things. One is, please stop quoting Weather Channel storm names. We do not do Weather Channel storm names on this channel, okay? And the other thing,
Weather Channel storm names.
yes, and the other thing is, I understand you have your opinions about your forecast. You're probably one of the most absolutist people I have ever seen when it comes to forecasting. And anyway, I just wanted to say that and get that off my chest. Anyway, so knock off the Weather Channel stuff, or I will knock you off. Anyway,
Really?
all right, so now we have the Dave. Now we have the Dave Tolleris. Oh, I just want to make one other point real quick with regards to snow maps. And apparently, people seem to think that the first thing you do, it's got to be absolute 3 days in advance. It's got to be absolutely right. Okay. The first number they grasp onto is that's the number. So if you don't get that number, you're going to be taken out and stretched at the rack, burned at the stake, and then ultimately beheaded. Okay. People need to understand that there is this is a very fluid business that we're in, and things do change and evolve, and you have to evolve with that. On that note, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, to follow that point up, Joe, I mean, part of this has to do with the level of science education in this country as a whole.
Oh, I would agree with you on that.
And the problem is that, when you get new data and it comes in and you change things, for some reason, there's a significant portion of the population that thinks the very first thing that comes in should be the actual final truth. It is not a flaw to update things as you get more information, whether you're dealing with medicine or viruses or weather forecasts or what have you. When you get more information, things change. That's what science does. The changing is not a flaw. It's how science is supposed to work. If you want absolute perfection and your ideas never change, I suggest you go back to religion. That's not what we do in science. When science things change, we change the data. If that bothers you, tough. That's not the way it works. I'm sorry. Okay. Just had to get that off my chest.
This is, we rant from time to time, and that's you're absolutely correct. And the other, and as I said earlier, the world does not revolve around your zip code.
It does actually.
No, it does around your. No, clearly your zip code, because you live in a lovely zip code. But
Joe, what I just realized, I have a shirt I should have put on for the shirt, and the shirt says in big giant. It's a blue shirt, dark navy blue, and says in giant yellow letters, "It's all about me." So,
right. And we know anyway, it is. By the way,
it always is. This map is, look at the top. It says first call map, all right? There's going to be a follow-up for this forecast either later on today or this evening, which will be the last call map, okay? So now part of the problem when you're doing this is that this event is going to continuing, especially in eastern New England, until Wednesday morning. So, you have to space these maps out, because even though it might be over in Binghamton by Tuesday evening, let's say, that's not going to be the case in Boston and eastern Maine and in New Hampshire and southeast, in Rhode Island, eastern Massachusetts. So this is fairly long event. That being said, this was my snow map from last night, 11 p.m. This will be updated. And I have a compromise of about 3 inches going through New York City, Long Island. And then you can see the blue line, the 6-inch line inland. And of course, I try to get across the idea of the elevation. So you can see the Connecticut River Valley, the blue and the red lines go way up because the elevation is there is much lower. And then you can also see it in the Hudson Valley as well. But I do have the 16 to 20-inch line across through the Catskills into the southern Adirondacks, into the Berkshires. And then the other difference here is that I've got more snow in eastern Massachusetts than Joe does. But Joe's forecast was yesterday afternoon, but so obviously you have to take into consideration. So this was based upon
the difference is, Joe. The difference, Dave, is my map ended, I believe, at 7 a.m. at 7 p.m. on Tuesday evening. Yours continues for another 12 more hours.
Yes,
and so it does not include that final 12 hours of snow that may fall over portions of eastern Massachusetts or eastern New England.
Exactly what it. Yeah, and that's when they would get a lot of snow there. So now, I just looked at the 12Z GFS, and the GFS is still doing what it was doing. It's got a piece of low, a trough from the coastal low that runs into New York City on Tuesday. And what that does is that force keeps all the snow north of New York City. So it ends up with like a final of at a 10-to-1 ratio of 2.5 inches in New York City, which of course at a 5-to-1 ratio is going to be 1 inch. Okay, but it also does that for Southwest Connecticut. That might be correct. I think it's wrong because no other model has that trough going from the low into New York City, in a northwest direction. But in any event, it does have, and again at a 10-to-1 ratio, it does have 19 inches in Worcester. It's got 14 in Boston. Which I think is a little high. It does have 23 inches in the Berkshires in western Massachusetts, and the Catskills has got 18 inches there. So the overall, I like the way this map is going so far. There'll be some changes to it. Based upon what I'm seeing at the 6Z NAM, I would not change my 3-inch line here for Central Jersey and for New York City and Long Island.
I'm sorry, the 6Z or the 12Z NAM?
The 12Z NAM and also the 6Z the European Ensemble.
Okay.
I would keep that in about where I have it right now. So, I'm not sure if I keep 16 to 20 in the central Hudson Valley. I might break that up into 3 different sections. So one for, interior eastern Massachusetts, one for western Massachusetts, the other side of the Connecticut River, and then break the Hudson Valley up a little bit. But overall, I'm fairly happy with this map at this point.
Okay.
That's where I stand with it right now.
All right. So now we'll go to mine, which actually,
yes,
Dave, is not that different from yours.
Okay.
Hang on. Here we go. So this is what I did. So, and when I do a first call map, I always say to people, you know what? A, it's a first call. Second, I'm not going to change it every 6 hours because the models change. I have an idea in my head of what's going to happen, and that's kind of where I go with it. And I will, I'll probably do a final call map tomorrow morning because at that point we're within 24 hours, and that's fine. So what I did was, basically, where you had the 3-inch, and I did this yesterday morning. So when you had the 3-inch, I have the trace. I'm a step south now. Okay. Given everything that I've seen so far, even before I saw the NAM yesterday, I was tempted to take the trace line down to say 195 in New Jersey to between Trenton and Philadelphia, somewhere in there. And then maybe bring the 2-inch line where I have the trace line, the 4-inch line where I got the 2, the 8 to where I got the 4, and maybe nudge the 12 line a little bit further south as well. But I'm kind of comfortable with this. Again, for folks looking at this, when you look at these maps, when you look at snowfall forecast maps, there's a fluidity to them. When you deal with a weather situation, there's a fluidity to them. But we're kind of, it's going to change, and just expect it when the final call comes. That's the one. And by the way, Joe, tell you, Dave, on the 2 events that we had up here, well, there was the first one that when New York City got, whatever it got, like 1.8, but they got 5 to 6 on Long Island and everyone. Our forecast maps were about as identical and also perfect, almost perfect. And we've, that's so rarely achieved. Because there's going to be a bust somewhere. Most times with snow events, some places there's always going to be an area that you're going to be too high on, and there's always going to be an area that you're going to be too low on. That's just the nature of what we're dealing with.
Yep. Always the case. Always.
All right. So so unshare, if you would. Actually, I don't even have to worry about you unsharing. I can go back. Let's go to the GFS because that's now out. Far enough. And give me a moment here, and we'll bring that up. Okay, so basically, the GFS has now, to me, gotten to a point where it's actually, Rick, if you look at the way the isobar is pulled back northwest toward New York City, it's sort of trying to do what the NAM and European have been showing since yesterday, but not the NAM so much, but but the European certainly, where the upper low, the southern energy is overdone on the GFS, and it's the northern energy that's going to be more important here. It's trying to get to that place. It's not quite there yet, but it is. I'm looking at this and seeing that stretched isobar to the northwest. It's kind of catching that what it has is not correct, and is going to go the way of what the European and the NAM are indicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm also wondering whether or not, as the area of FGEM passes through, and there's some pretty significant areas in upper level energy or whatever, is it possible we might hear some rumbles of thunder after midnight tomorrow night or early on Tuesday morning?
Why not? No, not with the upper low where it is and all that FGen. Yeah, why not?
I especially like looking at the 6-hour average precip rate on the GFS, and there you have on at 6Z or 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning, you have that stripe, that narrow stripe of yellow and orange embedded within the greens and the blues, and that, I guess, is what's going to generate the heavy-duty precip. And again, you see something like that, and you say to yourself, well, there may be a little convection involved with that. So that'll be interesting to see too.
Yep, I think it's a very distinct possibility. And I'm wondering if one of these things where you get you get thunderstorms, and then as the storm comes in, the cold air, and the forcing gets extreme, it flashes over to snow. I mean, and it becomes a wild time in New York City for like 5 or 6 hours during the morning on Tuesday.
It occurs to me, we were talking about you're trying to figure out accumulation rates with the time of year and the marginal cold air and all the rest of it. If you look at the NAM implies a changeover sometime, I would, and oftentimes it's in cases like this where you have a low that's developing just offshore with the upper features, that it winds up happening maybe a little bit faster than what the models indicate by an hour or two. What if it changes over at, say, 4 a.m.? Okay.
Oh.
What if it changes over at 4 a.m.? You're going to accumulate between 4 and 8 a.m. and put down a pretty solid base.
Yes.
That's going to negate the idea that, well, you may not accumulate as much during the day because of all those other, all those things we just talked about, sun angle, marginal cold air, and all the rest of it. So that change over time, if it happens at 4 or 5 a.m., you can get a quick couple. You'll put down a quick few inches pretty quickly. There, your base will be down. Your roads are going to be covered.
Absolutely, it's huge. Getting that first coating down before the sun comes up is going to be huge, and that's going to make a big difference whether you get how much accumulation you'll get in New York and Long Island and Northeast New Jersey. So that's another variable. When does it change over? 4 a.m., 5 a.m., or 8 a.m.? That's huge. Very, very important.
And by the way, I'm just looking at the upper air from the GFS. I'm going back now. I'm going to go back to the run from 0Z on Friday night. And it has, this is where it had the upper low up somewhere not too far from Buffalo Tuesday morning. Closed off, and then diving southeastward to a position near Montauk. Okay. Now, if we look at just to show how the GFS is trying to kind of go in the direction of the other models. Now for the same time frame, the upper low is, if I had to guess, in the middle of that height, and it's deeper also, which is really also very important, by about 60 to 90 meters. There's an upper low, instead of being in southwestern New York, is down near or just south of Pittsburgh, and the track is off the central New Jersey coast and goes out. So, it's trying to do the same things that the European started showing yesterday and that the NAM clearly shows today. So the GFS may be 1 or 2 model cycles behind what the European is doing. And might as well see how far the Canadian. Do we have enough of the Canadian in yet? Actually, we do. It's out to 72 hours. And
that should do.
And the Canadian is kind of more like, it looks like it wants to take the upper low near Cape May, Delaware Bay, and then eventually winding it up near Nantucket, Cape Cod. Let's take a look real quick at the surface here. And okay, so there's your ocean low. Yeah. So as usual with the Canadian, it loves to split the difference. So the Canadian has the ocean low, but it doesn't take it as far out as the GFS, and it pulls it back to south of Montauk there by Tuesday morning. It's not that, it's not that far away from where the European and NAM are. It just isn't.
Joe, can you change the resolution on that to, let's say, the eastern and northeastern U.S.?
Sure. Hang on 1 second, so we get a tight view.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. So let's go to the Northeast U.S. So there you have it. So here's the Canadian. There's your ocean low, but like the GFS last night took that ocean low all the way out to 60, almost to 65 west before it arctic back northwestward. The Canadian has it out to about 70 and then arcs it back toward Montauk, Nantucket, and then starts to drop it southward from there. The Canadian's probably 1 run away from catching up to the European, if the European goes the same route, and the GFS is probably 2 runs away from catching up.
There's quite a difference between the positioning of the low at 12Z Tuesday from the GFS to the Canadian. The GFS has the low, I'd say, about 200 miles southeast of Montauk Point, and then we look at where the Canadian has it at 8 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and they have it practically sitting just south of Montauk, the 200 miles closer. And also, I mentioned that narrow band of yellow and orange over the tri-state area at 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning on the GFS. The Canadian has this much broader area of yellow and orange, heavy-duty precipitation from eastern Long Island, say east of exit 50 on the LIE, and points east, and also enveloping the coastal area of Connecticut and Rhode Island. So it's a much different, but of course, they also have the low much, much closer to eastern Long Island as opposed to the GFS.
David?
Yeah, I see that as well. And, very much so, the Canadian is almost like a compromise between the two. So the one thing, again, is that the Canadian takes the nor'easter very close to Cape Cod. When it goes, let me take what time frame is that? You can see it at, let's say Tuesday night, it's very close to Nantucket, 972 millibars, and 970 millibars on Tuesday afternoon. It's a real monster. And that, because it's so close to southeast Massachusetts, it keeps Boston in a lot more rain in southeastern Mass than the other models do. So there is that. And the other thing is, because the Canadian has it very strong and very far north like that, it also has a lot less of snow in New York City. And if you look at the snow, the precipitation type on tropical tidbits, or let's say in pivotal weather, you'll see again, let's say early Tuesday morning, Hudson Valley is still rain, but the Catskills is all snow, and Berkshires are snow, but Connecticut River Valley is rain. And then by the time you get to Tuesday morning, it's all snow. But it doesn't have quite the same intensity bands that the NAM does in New York City. It's got a lot less in there. And if I look at the numbers on the Yeah, it's got like an inch in New York City, but it has 5 inches in Yonkers. If you can believe that. It's not a bad overall solution as a compromise. Um, but you notice in Boston, it's got 2 inches in Boston, and it's got 15 in Worcester. I like that.
By the way, I just for laughs. Now I don't know, Dave. Are you if we use the 10-to-1 on the model runs for the snow ratio versus the Kuchera
Right.
ratios, do you think this might be a case where we should look at the Kuchera instead?
I get mixed feelings about the Kuchera. I mean, it also depends on what you're looking at. If you look at the Kuchera, let's see here. That map that you have up there, is that Kuchera?
No, the map I have up, I'll put the Kuchera up right now. The map I have up here is that this is the Weather Service,
Right.
the Weather Service digital forecast, which
Right.
Has been updated through the morning zone, so with all the numbers. And of course, they don't have much on the southern flank. They have Boston up at 4, and you basically have to go north and west of Route 84 to start to get into the big amounts. Which, honestly, it's not an unfair assessment given what we're dealing with. And plus, again, this was done with the stuff from last night. Now, on the Kuchera on the NAM, which I will bring up here for you, and this is courtesy of Pivotal Weather.
There you go.
I just
want to remind people, for those folks who are weather nuts, weenies, and perverts out there, if you go to if you use WeatherBell, okay, well, if you use WeatherBell, okay, or even weather models, they have an enhanced snow algorithm. So what I mean by that is that, let's say the precipitation is snow or rain mixed, okay? They view that as all snow. If it's snow and sleet, they view that as all snow. So their numbers are often enhanced on those models. So if you go to Pivotal Weather, which is the one I prefer, they don't have that problem. So their snow numbers are not enhanced. So for example, if you look at the European model for snow total on a particular storm at WeatherBell, and then you go to the exact same storm at the exact same time, and you look at it at Pivotal Weather, you'll see several inches difference because they don't use the same sort of enhanced snow algorithm. So they're much more serious and more, I don't know, professional that word. They don't use enhanced snow algorithms. WeatherBell uses it, I think, to get snow people who love snow to go to their maps a lot, and it creates a false sense of what's going on. So that's that. The second question somebody asked me, what is Kuchera? All right. Many years ago, somebody came up with a new way of calculating snow amounts based upon some different factors in the atmosphere. So what they've done is they've taken all that research, they put into a snow algorithm where it measures the snow a little differently than its standard does, and that's called the Kuchera algorithm. It's got some advantages and some disadvantages, like everything in life. Some things work, it's good for, some things it's not so good for. But generally, Kuchera is a slightly better snow algorithm than the regular standard one. But to me, it's not overwhelming edge. It's a slight edge. So, that's what Kuchera is basically in a nutshell. It's a way of measuring snow and the computer models a little differently than the standard way that they measure it.
I've been switching off to a couple of different maps here. So I went to the 3-kilometer NAM Kuchera. Okay. And the 3-kilometer NAM has New York City at 10.9, Long Branch at 6.7, Brentwood at 6.3, Bridgeport 8.2.
Right.
Middletown 14.1, but Poughkeepsie 7.4, and then it goes back up to Waterbury at 12.5.
Elevation. Adds elevation to the Hudson Valley. Yeah.
So I mean, looking at the 3-kilometer NAM, if this seems to be able to pick up, just looking at it, it seems like it really is picking up. And by the way, this does not go through. This goes through 8 p.m. Tuesday evening. So there are going to be areas, particularly in New England, that are going to have more number. Are going to have these numbers go up. But given what the NAM did, and assuming that it's something close to being correct, these numbers don't look unreasonable. They certainly don't, in my view.
Well, if this was January or February, I would be banging the drum like a drunken sailor. But Is New York City going to see 10.9 inches? Not this ratio. It's not going to. It's not, and I don't think it's going to. Could it see 5 out of it? Yeah. I think that's possible. If you get the really blasting snow Tuesday morning with maybe some thunder, and you get the really heavy stuff coming down, sure. But you're not going to see.
But this is goes to another point when people, looking at these maps and they just take these numbers at face value. You have to give, we're trying, and I think succeeding in giving context to what these numbers actually mean, and that. To take them literally and to make plans out of them literally, you're going to be wrong most of the time, because there's too much variability, there's too much topography issues, there's too much all sorts of issues that are going to impact these numbers in one form or another. So again, as Joe Rayo, you said it. Snow maps, when we draw them, are one-dimensional because that's all we really have the ability of doing.
Correct.
And we have to give the context in terms of, either writing it, which people don't read, or speaking it to them, but people don't listen. So at the end of the day, you're just sort of hanging out there with your mouth, your jaw dropped down saying, why do I bother with all of this? But no matter, that's the 3 kilometer. I thought maybe it'd be a good idea that just for laughs, let's look at the HRRR. Now this is only going to take us to 48 hours. Right. I don't know what your feelings about the HRRR, Dave, are, because for me it's sort of like sometimes this model can be spot on and sometimes it could be just god awful. It seems to be in a better place lately, but here's the HRRR. Which now this is ending 8 a.m. Tuesday. It's got 3 inches in New York City, 4.2 at Islip, 3.3 at Yonkers, 9 at Middletown, but only an inch at Poughkeepsie, and 7.3 at Waterbury. You see the hole there, up the Hudson Valley, east of the
and also
east of the Hudson.
Also the Connecticut River Valley, same thing.
Yes. Yeah. So folks, when you're looking at this map, and you see that gap, I'll just circle them here if I can. I think I can.
By the way, Joe, if the NAM, not Kuchera, the regular snow map, not Kuchera algorithm, okay, the NAM at 60 hours, I want to make sure I got this right. New York City, 17.2.
Not Kuchera.
Not Kuchera. On
the not Kuchera, on the standard 10-1,
right?
If you take the whole event, just take it out to 84.
Right.
I'm just bringing the map up.
No, on the 3 kilometer, but just a regular snow algorithm.
Oh, on the 3 kilometer.
Yeah.
On the regular snow algorithm. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I did. I did. It's got
17.2 inches in New York City. Okay, there's a better chance of monkeys flying out of my ass on Tuesday morning than New York City getting 17.2 inches. Okay, I'm sorry. That's
right. Well, Dave, 1 hour and 16 minutes into the show, if this is the point that you go down this road, I'm okay with it. That's fine. We're all grown-ups here.
Well, I mean, come on, really? A 17.2 on this one? Again, if this was January, February, I would be banging the drum really hard. I mean, I'm not people want to know I am not anti-snow. Can you imagine, Joe, people actually saying to me, DT, you're anti-snow? I mean, come on. Okay.
What does that even mean, anti? It's like, really, is that like a political statement now that we can't even, you got to.
I don't know. So, well, there are different meteorologists out there which have particular biases about weather. I mean, there's one guy in Hampton Roads down here in Channel 10. He's been around a long time. He's not a Met, but he's doing it a long time. And they call him a snow hater in Hampton Roads because he's always underdoes NWS snow all the time. And, he's just got the reputation for doing it. So everyone has their bias one way or the other. It's just one of those things. But no, I'm not anti-snow, but I'm not not anti.
You're doing your job. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not anti-science either. So that's not going to, not 17, no. And you can see this is why the Kuchera, and to answer the other question in the chat, why Kuchera is being used, because it has a much more realistic snow amount than 17.2. Now, that may still be too high, the 10 inches.
Cut that in half.
Right. But, that's why you can see the difference, 17.2 versus 10.9. So, okay, so, you can see the difference in why the Kuchera is used more often and generally more favorable. There are instances where the Kuchera will give you more snow than the regular snow algorithm. So it's not always the lower end. You can't always say that.
Right. All right, you know what? We're an hour and 18 minutes into the show, and my poor dog, who is
he's going back and forth. He's going back and forth.
No. Whenever as soon as I put my headsets on, Joe, I'm not kidding you, because my office is in my bedroom. As soon as I put the headsets on, he knows I'm talking about me because he picked his head up off the bed. He goes and lays down on the bed and sleeps through the whole show. Doesn't move, doesn't budge, and
that's his nap. He gets his nap.
It's he knows not to be to do this and not get in my way while I'm doing the show. So I got to take care of him because he hasn't done everything he's supposed to do this morning. So
neither have I. So what?
Yes, yeah, I know my coffee didn't kick in either. So let's end this with this question, Joe. Do you have anything else? Oh, he's switching headsets. So.
My thing is just ringing here, so keep on going.
So here's the question, Dave.
Yes.
If the European continues to go on the same road it's been on and matches up well with the NAM, do we see the Weather Service put winter storm watches up further south than they already are? Excuse me.
Well, they're probably going to, if what you guys have been showing over the last hour or so, certainly they would have to issue a winter weather advisory at the very least for Westchester, Rockland, and maybe even down into parts of the New York City metropolitan, and even maybe for Long Island as well.
Yeah, I think you have to put it out there as a precaution. Okay, and if the trend continues, I might, if I was doing it, I wouldn't mind even say that the potential exists for more than we have with weather advisories, which will be, considered in the later forecast. I want to let people know that it could get worse, that the snow amounts could go up on Tuesday, as opposed to, people understand that they might get more than we're thinking here. So you would want to word a statement that way for the public, thinking, okay, it's got 2 to 4, let's say New York City, but it could be more like 5 or 6, depending on what happens. They want to give yourself some leeway here in these very tricky situations.
Yeah.
And this is a really tricky situation.
It is. I think what they're going to do, my guess is what they're going to do, assuming that like I said, that the Euro keeps doing what it's doing, my guess is that maybe they finally capitulate, Joe, and they put Westchester County and Rockland County in a winter storm watch. I think there's a fair chance, because of the magnitude of this, that I think there's a fair chance they may actually go, that Albany may already go to warnings tonight for this. I mean, we've seen them do that before inside 36 hours, so it's possible that they may even go to warnings. Boston probably has as tough a forecast, if not tougher, to figure.
Especially when you look at the fact that by later Tuesday and Tuesday night, the area of FGen or atmospheric energy kind of curlicues right over eastern Massachusetts or eastern New England and right in the vicinity of Boston. That's where the heavy duty stuff is going to be coming down. And quite honestly, wherever the rain versus snow line is going to be. So it is going to be a tough forecast. I don't think that, north and west of Boston, they're going to get hammered with quite a bit of snow. But for Boston, and especially, you have to consider, what are you going to give Cape Cod and the islands in terms of snowfall, if any? So it's tough all around. It's going to be an interesting 3 days. And for all of you out there who during January and especially February, each night on the Joe and Joe show, posted on the chat board saying, winter is over, winter is dead. Throw out this winter and let's go move on to the winter of 23-24. For all of you who said it's all over and we're not going to get anything interesting for the remainder of this winter season, I hope you're satisfied.
You know, by the way, Joe, when you think about it, areas just inland of the coast, if they wind up performing in line with some of these more aggressive models, or maybe a little bit above that, their snowfall total numbers will probably come in close to normal.
That's right.
You know, considering what's happened in the last couple of weeks. David Scott, late to hitting the super chat tip jar, but it's never too late to hit the super chat tip jar. Thank you so much, David. Most appreciated, and thanks to everybody, by the way, that did that, and also thanks to all of you, the 151 of you that hit the like button. Would have been nice if we could have gone over to 200, but you know that's the way things are. David,
yes, sir.
I am so happy that you said yes this morning. I really mean that. Okay.
Well, then you need to get a life there, Joe.
No, look, David, you know, and Joe knows this. I'm a humble person. You know, David, that I love you almost as much as I love my laundry. I may actually unblock you from on Facebook.
No way.
That is how I don't even know why I blocked you. It was not it's not for weather. I don't even remember what it was. It was just
I don't know what it was.
You know, you went on some rage, but no, in all serious, because social media to me is painful, and it's a lot of it is just bullshit. It's not real life. It's not human existence. But unfortunately, we have to be attached to it because this is how we earn a living. But in all seriousness, I'm really so happy that you came on, and we would love to have you again.
This is more fun than bringing a burn victim to a fire show. What can I tell you?
God. The thoughts of the guests are just the thoughts of the guests and do not reflect the thoughts of the hosts of this show. I'll have to type out a crawl and run that underneath the screen. But
for that comment alone, we should have gotten 32 likes to get us to 200.
There you go.
Oh God. So anyway, again, really, thank you very much for taking the time out. And
let me just say one last thing here, Joe's. For those worrying about the winter, there have been 8 or 9 winters. Let me see which ones are here. Where you had a La Nina that's ended in the spring, and El Nino, which has started in the summer or the fall. 2008 was one of them, I believe. 1976 was one of them. 1904. I tried them all the way back. I think there's 10, 11 of them since 1900. And if you look at the analogs of all those years, and then you look what those winters were like, where you've gone from La Nina to El Nino, and then following winters coming up.
The first 2 years you mentioned, at least for eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, those were robust winter years.
Yeah, well, if you look at all of them, 1904, 1911, 1925, 1976, 1951, 1918, 2008 to 2010, something like that, where La Ninas died and El Ninos came up in the spring and summer. All of those winters featured large areas of the country east of the Mississippi River below normal in temperatures. I didn't find a single analog out of all those 10 years where they featured normal temperatures. Okay. Not one.
And on that point, okay, on that point, I don't know if you're getting this, but I certainly am, and I know Joe's probably seen it too. Of course, some people have concluded that this is how it's going to be from now on, that it will never snow in the I-95 corridor ever again.
Oh, please.
And my response to all of that is just sort of like, when it happens 10 years in a row, we can have that conversation. But This is just simply a one-off, and that's just how. And we've had one-offs all the time, and we will continue to have one-offs all the time.
We've had 3 years of La Nina, which is always a problem because La Ninas keep enhance Pacific jet streams, and they put the trough on the west coast, which means you get a ridge on the southeast coast, and it's impossible to get big nor'easters, and that's a problem. But again, I remind people that in 2009, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's kind of my opinion a nutcase, stood on the steps of Washington saying that cold winters were gone, and the very next winter you had the great winter of 2009, 2010.
Followed by the winter of 2010, 2011.
Right. So, whenever you say things like, "Oh, this can't ever happen," that's when God looks around and goes, "Oh."
Well,
So
yeah,
you don't
no,
want-
exactly. I'm a contrarian by nature. So to me, the fact that there's so many people saying stuff like that and seeing articles, articles online about this, this is how you said God. I did not, by the way, which just like
Right.
almost knocked me off my chair.
Woo.
Yeah. But
or just
no,
say
but
the forces of the universe. You could say that.
the
But
forces,
the point is,
however you want to look at it, those people are guaranteed to look foolish because they're saying things that they have no business saying.
Right.
Based on
right.
nothing. Based on
right.
I'm writing a story because I need to get clicks on my website. That's it.
That's it. So
Joseph,
right,
do you have any parting thoughts? My dog is patiently waiting.
All I'm going to do is, since we're 186 likes up, I'm now going to read everybody who hit super chats today, which we thoroughly enjoy, and we thank you from the bottom of our heart. Thank you, David Scott. And at the end of this list, I'm hoping that we'll be close to or at 200 likes. So here we go. Thank you to David Scott. Thank you to Brandon Doherty. Thank you to Leon Probitsky. Thank you to Jason Kaplan, Robert Russo, Joe Lepresti, Barry Goldberg, and the guy who kicked everything off this morning, 27 Nor'easter. We thank you very, very much for hitting the tip jar today. Joe, I have nothing else to say except, well, here's what I have to say, and we've said this through the last 40-plus years of our careers. Let's wait till the next run.
When you can't figure it out, it's always wise to punt.
That's gonna be my tombstone. Wait till the next one.
And I've just been alerted by the executive producer that we were thinking about adopting a dog. Yes. And the dog was we were among the families who were up for adoption, and it went to a family who had two other dogs. And I said to Renata, I said, "You watch, the two other dogs are going to gang up on this poor little Yorkshire Terrier mix, and they're going to bring the dog back." And I've just been informed that the dog has been brought back. So now we have another shot at getting this little puppy. So
we
have to get him today.
Dave, do you have a dog?
You don't do.
Does my son count? No. Okay, no.
Oh,
no,
stop.
No, I don't. No.
I have an Aussie. And now he's looking because he knows I'm talking about him. I have an Aussie Border Collie mix, and I will just say this: if you ever decide to get a dog, get an Aussie Border Collie mix because they are so incredibly smart. My dog is just incredibly smart, and I'm not saying that because he's my dog. I'm telling you. Aussies are very smart dogs. Border Collies are very smart dogs. And when you put those two breeds together, oh my, what a dog you get from that. Although I had to take him in the shower yesterday to give him a bath. He was not happy. He does not like getting wet.
Oh, I saw Joe, on MeTV yesterday morning, they ran a cartoon that you and I remember from many, many years ago. With Elmer Fudd, his dog, and the flea who's singing, "There's food around the corner, food around the corner." And I'm watching this with my daughter, and I'm saying, you have no idea what memories this brings back.
Oh, I remember that one, Joe. I remember that.
Food around the corner for me.
Yeah, that's great.
Guys, I'm cutting out right now.
Yeah, no,
thanks to all.
It's time to go. Everybody, see you. Weather updates on patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Cioffi. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll have a Weather in 5 video and a Weather in a Minute video up, going up later today after all the model runs are done. Bye, Dave. Bye, Joe.
See you guys.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.
Okay, done.